Joining me now is Oklahoma's Secretary of Energy and the Environment, Michael Teague. Well, when it comes to our resources, probably nothing is more important than water. And we've had a lot of it in parts of the state, maybe not so much in other parts of the state. But really, conservation is the key to probably a lot of our problems?
I think that's the first step. I think that's what we need to start with. I think water is the largest issue facing both the energy and the environment sides of our office. It's going to impact industry. It's going to impact, it already is impacting agricultural industry. It's, to me, the #1 issue facing the state. And it's one that you have to get out in front of. Water projects take a long time. And the very first thing you can do is make the best use of what you've got. You know, our background with the Corps of Engineers was focused on the surface water in Oklahoma, and if you were at Lake Tenkiller, then do you want the water in the lake for recreation and for water supply users there? Do you want the water released and downstream for downstream fisheries in the communities down below? The answer is yes. I mean, you want it in both places. Well, there's a hydropower project that sits in the middle. So if you're going to let that water loose out of the dam, you ought to generate electricity with it, and again, make the best use. And by the way, that water at Tenkiller runs down and hits the navigation system on the McClellan-Kerr Arkansas River Nav system, and so that's supporting the navigation industry for the ports of Muskogee and Johnson's Port 33 and all the way to Port of Catoosa. So you have to make the best use of the water you have, and that's on a large scale. And so the question is, what do you do at the small scale, and how much impact could you have? What should you be doing in your house? Well, you probably shouldn't have your sprinklers on this morning when there's snow out on the ground. And I tell you, I mean, we've driven all over the state in the last couple of months, and it's amazing how many sprinkler systems are still turned on in January in Oklahoma. It just doesn't make any sense to me, but that's where the water goes.
Yeah, I understand that one because it just might freeze on them, yeah. Let me ask you this, because you mentioned industry, and I was just going through, you know, our top industries. You've got energy, you've got agriculture, and you've got tourism and recreation. All three of those majorly impacted by our water supplies.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much of that relies on the surface water. And so where we've seen the largest impact of the drought is really the southwest corner of the state. And that's impacted the agricultural industry really for the last 3 years. I think last week when I checked, Lugert Altus is down 30 feet. We were out there just before Christmas to talk about water and to bring together the community and the city of Altus and the agricultural users and figure out what can they do together towards finding a solution to make the best use of the water they've got, and then are there projects that they should invest in collectively to increase their infrastructure. We're seeing that drought impact now is coming down the Red River. And so where it's been impacting Lugert Altus, Waurika, Lake Kemp over on the Texas side, Tom Steed, Foss, now we're seeing those impacts are starting to hit Lake Texoma. So Lake Texoma right now, tourism. And so it's about 608 is the elevation of the lake, and that's probably about 9 feet low from where it normally would be this time of year. And it's because the watershed for Texoma is all those lakes I just listed that have been hit by the drought for the last 3 years. I mean, that's the bubble that all feeds Texoma. And so we've been down there and talked to some of the communities around there, and I've asked those communities, what do you have for drought plans? What are you doing for water conservation? What are you doing to conserve your water? And it's interesting how many of those communities will say, hey, the lake is down, but we're not in a drought. We have water. And so they're not putting any water conservation in, but yet the water that they're taking out of the rivers, whether it's the Blue or the Washita, that's water that could be in the lake. So I think we have to talk about water conservation at the community level. We've been asked before if we see, you know, any kind of a state mandate. I don't think we see anything at the state level. I think this is a municipal issue, and the communities can deal with it. Bartlesville has done a great job of their water conservation. Oklahoma City has started. There's been some voluntary measures in different communities, but I think it's time for the communities really to step that up a little bit and really put some water restrictions. We've been stationed around the world and around the country, and we've lived in other communities that have water restrictions. It impacts when they first start, and people get used to it. We were there in Colorado Springs, and about 5 years after we got there, they lifted the water restrictions. Nobody changed.
Yeah, and what exactly did they do in Colorado Springs?
So they did the alternate days for watering your yard, restricted when you could wash your car. Large water uses like that. They certainly went to the industries and asked them and put conservation plans in place. What we saw when we were in Colorado is that folks went from irrigation systems to xeriscape and go back to more natural grasses and some rock that didn't require watering.
Definitely cheaper.
It's much cheaper, and it's a lot easier to maintain. You don't have to cut your grass on Saturday. But at the end of that 5 years, when they lifted the water restrictions, people didn't pull out that xeriscape and go put their lawns back in because they were comfortable with it. And so it was a behavioral change. It's very similar to what we're doing on the energy efficiency across the state right now. And so the governor's 20 by 2020 program starts with a behavior conservation for energy efficiency of state employees and state facilities. And it's actually modeled out of OSU and what was done here on the campus. And so you change the behavior first. And that's what I talk about water conservation. We have to change that behavior. There's some other things, and you mentioned the industry, and so that really gets to more recycling and reuse types of projects. Devon has got a water recycling facility out at the Cane of Woodford where they're drilling, and so they're pulling the water back, the flowback water back, and realized that the quality was good enough that they could actually filter it fairly easily and then use it for the next well. And so they worked with the Corporation Commission on some of the regulatory pieces, but they've got a facility set there where they actually are piping the water back to this filtering system, piping it back out to the next drill pad, and they've taken trucks off the road, which is great for county commissioners. They're using a lot less fresh water, which is great for the drought, and they're saving themselves money. So it's kind of a win-win-win. It's a big operation, and so now the question is, how do we do something like that to where all the operators could take advantage of something like that? Either get the cost of the technology lower. We've had a couple of folks talk to us that they have mobile solutions that they could bring out and operate really from truck to tank back into the well and do it on the drill pad. We've had some other folks come and talk about setting up maybe a central water reuse facility and then spoking out to support maybe multiple operators as they drill in an area. So I think there's a lot of solutions out there, and I think industry is great about figuring out how to come up with those and then how to use them.
Yeah, because ultimately it will save them money.
It does.
Yeah,
it does.
You know, talking to climatologists, it's very possible we could just be at the front end of a drought. What could that mean for the state?
I actually think we're in the middle of it. Some folks, again, we got all the storms last spring, and we got some pretty good rains August, September, and a lot of folks said, congratulations, the drought's over. And that's just not the case. We've been in a drought for 3 years. I think we're going to be in a drought for another 3. If you go back and look with the climatologist, this really looks like the 1950s drought, which was 51 to about 57. So about 6 years, I think we're in the same thing. I think what's different is that it's starting to impact other areas of this country that aren't used to being in drought. Southwest part of the United States has always had water, issues, and the infrastructure put in place has led to all the development. But we're starting to see water shortages or restrictions come across the southeast part of this country. And the southeast part of the nation's never really had to deal with drought before. And so they're starting to see some issues as well.
Now, is there anything that we can do at the state level that would influence communities to put some stricter standards in place?
I think there are. I think there's 2 pieces to it. I think the first part is information. It's talking to the communities and saying, look, if you want to talk about a lake being low, then tell me what you're doing to conserve water that helps that lake. Be part of the solution. And I think, to be honest, as we've traveled around the state, and certainly as I traveled with the Corps of Engineers the last 3 years and what I've done with the state in the last 5 or 6 months, Oklahomans help Oklahomans. People want to be involved. You saw the response to the storms last spring. I mean, it was incredible. Oklahomans want to help each other. And so that's the first part, get the communities involved. The second piece goes to something that we can do at the state, and that's talk about water reuse. And so what's the best use of water that's come out of treatment plants? Do you need fresh water to water a golf course? Probably not. That gets to a permitting issue at the state level. And so we're working through right now of how we're going to issue those permits. I think we'll see those permits get issued pretty soon.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Secretary Teague.
Thanks.